Very much less, Councillor. Minister, I'm glad to get the opportunity to raise the issue of the cost of fuel, which is impacting on everyone on the road. Whether it is the man going to work in the car or the mother taking children to school, whether it is the man filling up his lorry, transporting goods, and we're far away from everywhere. Kerry is impacted, I believe, worse, more so than many other places. Construction work vehicles, the increase in the cost of fuel is massive, and the pumps along the road tell the story, 2.15 and 2.20, and people are at their wits' end to try to stay on the road. As I said, work is slowing, Minister. People building new houses, even people building one-off houses, they're pausing at the present time, wondering what they're going to do. Farmers paying for green diesel 160 and 170. Bus operators tied into contracts. Taxis, there's a problem with taxis at night now, they're just not operating because it didn't work their while. We see where the trawlers are they're parking up. And indeed, one transport company close to yourself in Cork is parked up this week. You're taking almost double in tax back now out of the fuel to what you were over 12 months, around 12 months ago. Surely it's time to give back some of the extra tax that you're taking now to the people on the road. They need it and to stay going. And October is too far away. You're talking about mini budgets and budgets. But this, you said about budget is the normal time. These are not normal times, and people paying to try to stay on the road, trying to fill their cars and their vehicles. It's not normal. They're not paying normal prices now. You need to keep work going, Minister. And I believe that this is the time to intervene and give back. We'll recognise the fact that he gave back 15 or 20 cents there a couple of months ago, but it's not enough now, because it's gone way up now again, and it's time to intervene now and ensure that work stays going, and he'll reap the dividends anyway if the work continues. But if work stops up, he won't even get the court tax that he will get out of it, because people won't be on the road. They can't stay going, and that's the honest truth about it. I don't believe that you're aware of how serious the issue is, and how people are suffering, and people that have to travel long journeys from Kerry to go to work. They're paying massive costs to fill their cars and to try to stay going. Again, I say to you, these are not normal times. And in rural Kerry, where people can't travel without a car or without some type of a vehicle, they're paying more and they're suffering more. And Minister, I'm please asking you now to act now and give them back a sizable amount of the extra tax that you're taking.
Thank you very much,
Danny Healy-Rae. And look, you make the very valid point that rising fuel prices impact across the board. Private citizens, households of course, but also in private enterprise, private contractors, farmers, and indeed the delivery of public works contracts. And we have made a number of interventions as a government. We've already talked about the reduction in excise, which comes at a significant cost. Initially it was 320 million up until the end of August, and that was extended to budget day, so total cost there of well over 400 million. That's the reduction in excise on petrol and indeed on diesel as well. When it comes to school transport, to make sure the school transport services continued up to the end of the year, we did provide extra resources. Extra money was paid to school transport providers, because we were concerned that for many of them it simply was no longer viable to continue to provide what is an absolutely essential service. And we did introduce a special scheme of support for hauliers as well that I know you'll be very familiar with. And in relation to private contractors doing public works, I brought in an inflation cooperation framework whereby not just in respect of materials prices, but also the cost of energy, fuel, that the state would step in and carry 70% of the extra cost above and beyond normal levels of inflation, and would backdate that to the 1st of January. And it's a little early to say what the impact of that is, but there are some indications that we are seeing a greater willingness now among private contractors to take up public works contracts, because there was an issue there given the level of inflation, the level of uncertainty, and the fact that the contract up to that point provided for no price variation whatsoever. The contractor had to carry all of the risk, and I recognised that that was an issue and that a change would have to be made. In relation to the price at the pumps, the levers open to government are limited. You could reduce VAT, it's 23%, but you'd have to do it on everything, and almost half of economic activity is levied at the 23% rate of VAT. A 1% reduction is £500 million a year. So that's the truth when it comes to VAT. And in relation to excise, we've already made a reduction, and certainly in respect of diesel, it is the case that when you combine that with the diesel rebate scheme, we are at the minimum allowed under the minimum tax directive under the European Union. So we don't have that many options when it comes to reducing the price at the forecourts. It is primarily determined by wholesale prices. The exchange rate is unfavourable at the moment in respect of the strength of the dollar relative to the euro. So there are challenges there, but government will examine all of these issues again in the context of the period leading up to the autumn.
Deputy Danny Healy-Rae.
Minister, thank you for your reply, but in your reply you haven't given an awful lot of comfort to people that are struggling out there today, and while I do accept and acknowledge what you have given already, it's just not enough. You have to admit, Minister, that you are taking in a massive increase in taxation. Even in the last 2 weeks, I believe that fuel has increased by 20% in the last 2 weeks alone. And that's coming out of people's pockets, the people that are on the road that are trying to pay. And I recognise what you said about the haulers, but to qualify for that you have to have a haulage licence. And hauliers who are supplying their own goods don't have a haulier's licence, so they're not benefiting, Minister. And again I say to you, people that are travelling long distances, going to work, putting petrol and diesel in the car, he'll have to do more for them, and they can't wait till the budget, Minister. And take the farmers, 2 cents is all he gave them off of the price of green diesel. God almighty, Minister, it is 160 and 170 today, and they're trying to keep going, trying to provide fodder and trying to provide food for the people all over the country. And he'll have to do something for them. And talking about a budget and addressing issues in the budget, he have to address the real problem. The kernel of the problem is the extra tax that you're taking. That's every room there to do something for them. I'm begging you, please, Minister, to do something for those people.
Yeah, Deputy, you started your contribution by rightly saying that these are not normal times, and I agree with you. And in normal times, a government wouldn't come out in March and say we're going to reduce excise by 20 cent and 15 cent, and that was an exceptional intervention because of the cost that people are facing. Now, it happened to coincide with a time when wholesale prices were rising, and so people felt that they didn't see any benefit. But it is the case, if the government hadn't made that intervention, the prices at the forecourts would be 20 cent and 15 cent higher than they currently are. And as I have explained, the options open to government in relation to fuel are very limited. You could reduce VAT, but at massive cost, because you can't do it in respect of diesel and petrol alone. You have to do it on half of the activity across the entire Irish economy at a cost of about £500 million a year for every 1%. So that's a massive cost for a measure that is not very targeted. And so the government are, of course, in the context of the budget, examining all of the options that we have to see how we can help. And you've raised a range of different sectors there, contractors, farmers, people delivering public works, and of course private motorists. We acknowledge those pressures, and we will very much take that into account.
Thank you.